Hello, and welcome back to Suzerain, the Kingdom of Rizia, with Ramus Taurus. In today's episode, we're going to finish this amendment to the Zeal Agreement of 1927, and after we do that, we're going to move along and see what comes next. I've decided I'm going to keep a little negotiating power positive, just in case that matters. We're going to import oil from Welland. We're going to give them wine and small arms. We're going to promise aid against the BFF. We're going to ban only bloodish people. And we're going to be giving them full equal rights for Wessex citizens. Which, that's honestly the thing I'm most worried about, but, you know, I don't care. It's gonna be fine. Yes! I'm actually not sure. Ooh! We can now look at the Azaro chess piece. Chess is the noblest of games, a testament to the art of strategy. It has also proven to be an excellent way to pass time in palace halls. This beautiful piece was a part of a set commissioned by House Azaro as an ode to their military prowess. Lorenzo noted each decision I made in the margins of the document. When he had finished going through everything, he sat back and raised an eyebrow. Welland should have no trouble accepting this, Your Majesty. The question is, will Rizia? He asked an aide to call Smollett back into the room. The president of Welland wiped Rosetta's crumbs off his mustache as he entered. What a delicious tart your people have invented. Now imagine if it was crust made of our strudel pastrel. Let's make a toaster strudel. But first things first, let's have a look at that treaty. Lorenzo handed him the anointed draft, and he flipped through it eagerly. As he reached the end, his eyes filled with glee. We can definitely work with this, Your Majesty. I have to say, I was not expecting such generosity from you. Assuming, of course, that you are planning on fulfilling these promises. Called a symbol of my greater intentions, I too wish for our countries to resume our formal partnership. We will resume it, Your Majesty. Together we will be stronger than ever before. Lorenzo quickly paged through the treaty document again. Considering our countries' respective situations, we've indeed promised you quite a lot. I hope you will remember our kingdom's generosity in future dealings. I will, Mr. Escobil, but first I need to see actions, not just words. I wish I had time to celebrate, but wish request awaits. Next time you visit us, we will smoke Kishra together. You'll discover what you're missing out on. That sounds like a plan, Mr. President. Lorenzo rose from his seat. An aide will show you out while we finish up in here, Mr. Smollett. Thanks again for your time. Thank you, Mr. Escobil, and of course, King Ramus. Have a safe trip back, Mr. President. I will. Welland is not so far away, after all. We accompanied Smollett to the door of the suite. He bowed one last time as an aide ushered him down the hall towards the exit. Lorenzo and I looked at each other for a long couple of moments. We have quite the task before us, don't we? But I'm confident you'll rise to the challenge. Your confidence and your assistance are both most appreciated. I am only doing my royal duty. Lorenzo gathered up the documents that were scattered across the table. Together we left the suite. Woo! We've got a lot of stuff to look at. Bloodish immigration ban implemented at Welland border, Salabes port. Guards at the Welland-Rizia border, as well as the port of Salabes, have been instructed to deny entry to any citizen of Welland carrying bloodish identification papers. Montclair. Thaddeus Azaro discharged from hospital. General Azaro has returned home after spending an extended period in the hospital due to a stroke. The family patriarch is still suffering from convulsions. Will now focus on recovering further at the Azaro Palace in Montclair. That's good. What's we got? Equal rights for Wessex citizens. The enacted landmark policy grants full equal rights to Wessex citizens. This move, promoting inclusivity and equality, has been widely praised for its fair stance on Wessex, fostering a more harmonious relation with the neighboring nation. Average industrial production capacity. Manufacturing sector is chugging along at a moderate pace, with some production facilities operating below maximum capacity. This middling performance is noticeable in the market, with some concerns about meeting both domestic and international demands. This consequences, though not dire, impact various facets, from job stability to filling export orders. Also, Welland oil imports gives me +3. Oh my god. That is a lot of energy. I mean, as long as I'm getting that much energy from Welland, as long as they keep that up, I honestly could not even, I don't need to build more energy stuff. Oh my god, that's a lot of energy. Rizia's comprehensive welfare system provides a robust safety net for its citizens, ensuring health, education, and employment benefits are widely accessible. The state's dedication to public welfare is evident in substantial budget allocation, fostering a sense of security among its populace. 1953 Amendment to the Zeal Agreement. The 1953 Amendment to the Zeal Agreement represents crucial modifications made to an agreement between Rizia and Welland, signifying important changes and updates to the terms and conditions outlined in the original pact. Ban only British people from border. Yeah, the implemented policy is banning solely British individuals from entering Rizian territories. This act, seen as a direct response to a request from Welland, is related to the escalating tension with the BFF. It sparks international criticism and heightened ethnic tensions, raising concerns about discrimination and the potential for escalated conflict in the neighboring regions. Yeah, well, an anti-BFF aid. There's an active commitment to aid Welland in its ongoing struggle with the British Freedom Front. This decision comes amid escalating tension within Welland's British regions. Fueled by the BFF's history of insurgency and armed conflict, Rizia's involvement, primarily through military and logistical support, is intended to bolster Welland's efforts to stabilize the region, marking significant diplomatic and military engagement. Arms export to Welland. The export of small arms from Rizia to Welland is conducted under stringent regulatory oversight, ensuring the compliance with international trade laws. This trade reflects Rizia's commitment to responsible arms trading. The export are significant for maintaining strategic balance and supporting Welland's defensive needs. And we have oil imports from Welland. The nation has seen a notable rise in oil imports from Welland, indicating a strategic move to diversify and secure its energy supplies. This increase not only enhances energy security, but also solidifies economic and energy relations with Welland. The oil imports are characterized by adherence to quality standards and contractual obligations, ensuring reliable and uninterrupted supply. Wine exports to Welland. Wine exports to Welland demonstrate a consistent growth, highlighting the region's renowned winemaking tradition. The trade is marked by a variety of high-quality Rizian wines, appealing to a broad consumer base in Welland. These exports are significant for Rizia's economy, representing a key sector in its trade portfolio. And we have lots of news. Equal rights extended to Wessex. Setting an example of benevolent leadership, King Ramus has enacted an amendment to the Zeal Agreement, underscoring commitment to the principles of justice and equality within the realm. The decision extends equal rights to Welland citizens residing in Rizia. The royal decree promises to improve the livelihood of Wessex in Zeal and across Rizia, offering equal access to employment, education, and healthcare. We trust His Majesty to ensure that these changes do not come at the expense of native-born Rizians. Instead, this initiative is seen as enhancement of our societal fabric, intertwining the destinies of Rizia and its Wessex residents in a shared future marked by prosperity and mutual respect. Rizia. Welland signed preliminary deal for Zeal return. After a meeting behind closed doors in Port Rizan, His Majesty Ramus Taurus and President Victor Smolik of Welland announced that they have reached a preliminary agreement regarding the return of the Zeal region. Because Welland will keep its hold on the region until all of the conditions in the deal are met, experts say it could take 3 years or longer before the handover is finally completed. Still, we regard this agreement as progress towards reunited Rizia, and look forward to the day when safety, security, and prosperity are restored to our lost land. Geopolitical. Arcasia's economic growth slows to 5%. The economic powerhouse of Arcasia confronts a new reality as its once exponential growth rate eases to 5%, highlighting emerging physical challenges amid a shifting economic paradigm. The downturn from previous high 9% signifies potential vulnerabilities in Arcasia's domestic financial policies and its adaptability to global market shifts. In response, the Arcasian government has increased its bond issuance, a move still finding favor among investors despite economic headwinds. This period of slow growth injects a dose of caution into Arcasia's economic discourse, as policymakers and international observers speculate on the nation's next step to recalibrate its economy and maintain its structure on the world's economic stage. Welland announces support for Rizia's Aurelius claim. Despite the Zeal bombing leading to a momentary increase in tension between the two, Welland rather surprisingly has thrown its weight behind Rizia in the AN arbitration case surrounding the Aurelius gas field. Wessex President Victor Smolik highlights historical Wessex-Rizian friendship as the reason for his support, saying that Welland will once again provide vital support to safeguard the Rizian crown, alluding to when Welland's armies saved the crown prince Ramus Taurus from kidnapping in 1920. Zeal handover officially postponed. After Welland invoked the AN threat mitigation protocol in order to justify its continued hold on the Zeal region, and Rizia's challenge of this motion into the gridlock, we at Geopolitico have been watching closely for any indication that a new handover date has been set. Now there appears to be an update. King Ramus Taurus and President Victor Smolik have agreed on a 3-year timeline, contingent on Rizia's meeting Welland's condition. Given Welland's turbulent past and present, and the wealth of resources concentrated in Zeal, we remain skeptical that this new appointment will be honored. Same, but let's hope for the best. Rumberg affirms alliance with Rizia, expresses support in a case. In news that will surprise absolutely no one, the Kingdom of Rumberg has sided with his fellow monarchy, Rizia, in the ongoing arbitration case over the Aurelius gas field. The two kingdoms have been allies since the marriage of monarch Ramus Taurus to the now-deceased Rumbergian princess, Lena Livingston, and it was expected that Rumberg would use what clout it has with the AN to back Rizia's claim to the field. Rumberg's own natural gas needs are well documented, of course, and we're sure Queen Beatrice would rather purchase energy from her brother-in-law than from the Grand Duchy of Pales. ATO voices concerns over gas field blockage. The Rizian and Palesian navies continue to remain in a standoff around the perimeter of the Aurelius gas field, sparking international concerns that a military confrontation may be imminent. Particularly, the Arcadian Treaty Organization, ATO, has spoken numerous times about the need for de-escalation. While ATO does not involve itself in territorial disputes, we cannot overlook actions that threaten peace, maritime security, and the principles upon which our alliance is built, stated President Dwight Walker of Arcadia. Other member states, including Lesbia, have echoed his sentiments, calling for restraint and a swift, peaceful resolution. They emphasized the need to avoid any actions that might escalate the situation further, or jeopardize the well-being of the local population and economic dependence on the gas field's potential. Zeal resistance funding, a decision to fund resistant movements in Zeal. I don't really think I need to. We have the option to fund resistance movements in the Zeal region. These could help increase pressure on the Wessex government to return Zeal to Rizia, but they could also destabilize the area, further justifying Welland's decision to hold on to it for national security reasons. Begin funding Aragon Tourist Association, begin funding the Zeal branch of Suomino, fund both organizations. I am tempted to fund non-violent, just for peacefully kind of pushing it in. I know I'm not going to support Suomino. So it's literally just 1 or 4. Do I want to support them in their non-violent, push, or do I want to just not fund and say it's good, everything's fine, hopefully we'll just get through this and be chill? I think I'm going to fund neither organization and hope I don't regret it. We're back to friendly with Welland. Let's go. Also, we have diplomatic mission strengthened. The Office of Counselor of Foreign Affairs and their team have expanded on their diplomatic mission in Welland and are improving the relations between the new nations. Well, 1, there was that. 2, we had our meeting, and now everything's looking better. Anton Rain's presidency. Swordland's new era begins. Swordland's welcome Anton Rain as the new president, ushering in this era of anticipated transformation amidst economic trials. Rain's Swiss political climb is emblematic of the electorate yearning for reform and economic revitalization. Its approach to governance, potentially in a cocktail of innovation traditionalism, will be pivotal in navigating Swordland through its recessionary phase. As President Rain commences his turn, allies and adversaries alike measuring the implications for regional power balances in Eastern Rakopa and beyond. With Swordlands at a critical juncture, Rain's leadership could chart a path for reassurance or retreat. Well, we're gonna get to find out what the base is like if you had no save for it. Because I died before we started this DLC, so we'll get to find out what the base is like, I guess. WHR concerned with Zeal crackdowns. The Watchtower of Human Rights has expressed its worry about the increasing crackdowns by Wessex officials in Zeal. An extensive report published by the organization lists extrajudicial arrests, disappearance of prisoners, and bans on demonstrations a common practice across the region. WHR called on Wellen to allow more observers and journalists into the region, something that has been increasingly difficult ever since stronger travel restrictions were put in place. The organization specifically stressed that the fight against terror cannot mean compromising basic human rights, but refrained from condemning the delay of the region's return to Rizia. Gathering of the MITS board member states. Alright. The question is, do I want to continue with what I was talking about? I hope to be able to maybe make some sort of compromise here, but I'm not sure if that's possible. But we'll have to wait and see. The thrum of helicopter blades was almost deafening as we prepared for our descent into the Meftium International Trade Zone. I looked out the window. We were above the Meftium Basin, an expansive dried-up lake containing millions of years' worth of sedentary deposits. The past decades of industrial activity had turned into a mosaic of underground and open-pit mines, linked by roads, railways, and makeshift canals. Smoke rose from the surrounding refineries, turning the sky a musty shade of orange. My eyes followed a cargo-laden freight train as it departed the Meftium station. Next to me in the helicopter, Alina noticed as well. One of Lespia's by the look of it. The gold will be shipped out of the Median port and reach Vino Robin by the evening. The birthplace of lesbian protectionism, relying on international partnership for gold imports. Tell me how that squares up. You're absolutely right, Your Majesty. Lesbian economic theory does not favor domestic production over foreign imports, but they make an exception for resources like gold and gas, especially when lesbian companies have a hand in their extraction. I recall you took a rather pro-Merlian stance in the Alliance of Nations session. Are you still leaning in that direction? I want to respect Morella's wishes, but we can't ignore its great economic importance to our kingdom. No, we can't. I'm sure we can reach a compromise that doesn't result in a total loss for us. Hopefully. We hit a rough patch of air as we continued our descent. I felt the gold disc in my suit pocket bump against my side. By the way, didn't you mention back in Qualis that you were an expert on antique coins? She adjusted her hair with a proud smile. Why, yes, you remember more about that night than I do, Your Majesty. I showed her the disc Rusty had given me. Her eyes widened with glee. That's no coin, Your Majesty. It's a resonant Aeroworth's prayer medallion. It was originally worn around one's neck, with the intention of keeping St. Work's teachings close to your heart at all times. I see. More proof that the Lord has chosen me to rule. One could see it that way, Your Majesty. We gently touched down on the helipad of the Cooperation Center, the building where its board meetings and other diplomatic functions were held. We were immediately met by a large security retinue and ushered inside to the reception hall, where the welcome ceremony was to take place. Alma Satana greeted us by the entrance. A security staff member showed Alina to her seat, while I followed the Morellan Prime Minister to the front of the hall. Thank you for coming, Mr. Torres. Of course, Comrade Sultana, I'm grateful for the chance to speak with you. She looked amused. I'll assume that is not an attempt to mock me. Genuinely it wasn't. I don't know why you would even think that. I was literally just talking to you. Geesh. You don't have to assume the worst about everyone. That's a bad quality to have in a person. I was gladdened to hear you were able to reach an understanding with Wellen. It gives me hopes for today's talks. If you are as open to negotiation as President Smollett was, I don't foresee a problem. I assure you that I am. She gestured for me to follow her. I'd like to start straight away, but my advisors have persuaded me that diplomatic protocol must be followed. A stage had been set up backdropped by our country's 4 flags. Patricio Alvarez was already sitting there, looking somewhat bored. I took my place next to him. He didn't acknowledge me. Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. Greetings, Your Majesty. We both fell silent. I noticed a certain bleariness in his eyes. I wondered whether his decision to quit drinking had lasted. The hall began to fill up with dignitaries, ministers, and heads of corporations. Mercy Montoro was in the back row, talking animatedly to lesbian politician. He broke off his conversation to throw me a wink. The doors to the hall suddenly swung open. Imrich Hegel entered, accompanied by a pair of bodyguards. He and Prime Minister Sultano exchanged cheek kisses. Alvarez could barely disguise his look of scorn. They're not your friends, you know. They're out to bleed both of us dry. I have faith that we can give Morella its due without our enemies coming to ruin. Sultana and Hegel joined us on stage. The Valgslandian Chancellor shook my hand with an encouraging smile. What are you smiling about, Chancellor? Oh, just the chance to make history today. The four of us posed for photographs. The Morellan national anthem was played, then those of Vagslan, Rizia, and finally Lesbia. That shows who takes what priority, doesn't it? It's just a ceremony, Mr. Alvarez. Don't read too much into it. When the music died down, we were escorted to the conference room together with our key ministers, security detail, and a number of legal advisors. Once we were seated, Prime Minister Sultano spoke. Actually, priority and all that, but usually people remember the first and last thing in a list of things, or like a song list or whatever, most. So really, Vagslan, or the Morellan national anthem was played first, and Lespia's was played last. So if anything, you'd think those would be the two remembered most, but that's going into psychology, whatever, moving on. Thank you for carving time out of your schedule to join me today, gentlemen. She looked around the table at each of us. Over 35 years ago, our country signed an agreement regarding the sharing of resources in the Meftian Basin. At that time, Morella was capable neither of exploring the full potential of the gold recorded here, nor of fending off raids from Nardurian neighbors. It was only with the cooperation of Rizia, Vagslan, and Lesbia that the international trade zone could become the thriving industrial center it is today. However, our predecessors failed to recognize the social and moral responsibilities that comes with such an economic endeavor, and Morella paid the price. I didn't say anything. All of us, Morella included, have benefited from the contract that allows us to pay its workers less and grant them fewer protections than in our individual home countries. At the same time, the area around the trade zone has been turned into a dumping ground for toxic chemicals to the detriment of our water systems and the people who depend on them. There is only one way forward. The ITZ must be restored to Morellan in ownership. Alvarez audibly scoffed. Is this actually what you believe, Miss Sultana, or are you just parroting the words of Chancellor Hegel? Please calm down, Mr. Alvarez. You may disagree with Morellan Prime Minister, but that doesn't give you the excuse to belittle her. You're right, of course, but my question still stands. The current cooperation between Morella and Vagslan is based on mutual respect. There's no string pulling. What would it take for Rizia and Morelia to achieve such cooperation? If your nation gives credence to my wishes, I'm more than willing to do the same. Chancellor Hegel and I have begun to work to propose a transfer ownership of ITZ to the Morellan state. The assets currently owned by Vagslan, Rizia, and Lesbia would be purchased by a new Morellan-owned company, run specifically for the governance of ITZ. Each country would then have the opportunity to buy shares in that company. The Republic of Vagslan has already agreed to forego that opportunity. Sultana nodded. Should Rizia and Lesbia choose to buy shares, they could still continue operations in some capacity, albeit under strict oversight and with more input from workers. You must understand that I have Rizia's own interests to think about. If I'm to agree to such a proposal, I have to know that our economy will remain stable. It's not my goal to bankrupt any of you. We're willing to make individual agreements with each stakeholder to offset any economic damage done by nationalization. Should we vote to proceed with the proposal, I would solicit each of your input. And if we vote not to proceed, what then? Then we will have to go back to the drawing board. In the case of a split decision, we would have to renegotiate the initial ITZ agreement until a way forward is found. But Aurora will no longer accept the status quo. Nor will Vags lend. Well, Lesbia stands firm in our convention that the ownership of ITZ should not change. If His Majesty knows what's good for his kingdom, he'll agree with me. Everyone seated at the table turned to me. Alina cleared her throat. So it is literally my decision on whether it's a tied vote, but with us two versus them, or 3v1. It's literally just I decide. That's fun. Are you ready for the vote, Your Majesty? No, I have a few more questions for the board. I don't wish you to take this decision lightly, Mr. Torres. What else do you want to know? Prime Minister Alvarez, if the nationalization vote does not pass, would you still be willing to address the complaints Prime Minister Sultana has made? Of course I would, Your Majesty. He sat up straight. I would just like to point out what a towering achievement is that it exists in the first place. 4 countries with 4 vastly different governments coming together for the economic benefit of all. It sounds preposterous, yet it works. The cooperation, and yes, competition, involves it sharing this valuable resource has not only brought our nations closer together, it's spurred innovation far beyond what any of us could achieve individually. We could harness that same spirit to address the very valid concerns Miss Sultana has brought up about the environment and human rights. He shrugged. Or we could throw it all away, scare off investors, and put God knows how many people out of work, because, why exactly? To score a few points with our Eastern comrades? Sultana and Hegel both had icy stares on their face. But you would not be willing to decrease Lesbia's profit share? I am willing to dedicate time and resource to improve in conditions in ITZ. Is that enough? Mr. Torres, if you meant what you said at AN, you shouldn't be entertaining this opinion. Sultana glanced at me uncomfortably. Whatever is decided today, I'm willing to work with both Rizia and Lesbia. Our different outlooks shouldn't get in the way of peaceful compromise. Alright, I'm ready to move forward with my decision. Very good, Mr. Torres. And by move forward, you mean? I would still like to confer with my treasurer before casting my official vote. The others at the table glanced around impatiently. Prime Minister Sultana nodded. I understand. We'll set up a separate room for you. The rest of us can break for coffee. It dispersed. Alina and I were seated in a smaller private conference room. Before we continue, Your Majesty, I do think Mr. Montoro should be privy to this conversation as well. Of course, he owns the majority of Rizian Royal Gold, after all. Alina notified an aide to send for Rusty. A few minutes later, he appeared. Your Majesty, Alina, have you tried Merlin's Sakura briskets yet? They're drier than a letter from ex-wife's divorce attorney. We are here to talk about biscuits, aren't we? Because as far as I'm concerned, the nationalization debate doesn't bear a discussion. Alina raised an eyebrow. King Ramis here is the leader of our country. If he says discussion necessary, then it is. My sincerest apologies to you both. I was just joking. Well, I'm not laughing. This is far from an easy decision. Alina nodded in agreement, then glanced up at the clock. We don't have long. Where would you like to begin, Your Majesty? What will the economic and financial impact on Rizia if Morella goes through with the nationalization plan? That depends on the exact nature of the agreement, doesn't it? Even if Rizia buys back its former share of the ITZ, Morella planned regulation will limit the revenue we can earn from it. but by privately negotiating the proposal terms with Prime Minister Sultana, we may yet be able to make an arrangement where we come out relatively unscathed. That'd be a real risk, Your Majesty. RG already almost went belly up after we lost Zeal. Thanks to you, we didn't have to waste money on needless safety regulation. But still, nationalizations could be the killing blow. At the same time, we are facing the usual high gold demand from Rumburg. With little in the way of gas holding, it would be difficult for Rizia to carry on as a resource-based economy. I didn't know the situation was this grave. It's not grave yet, but we should refrain from making rash promises. Nationalization doesn't seem reasonable to me. What's your opinion? Nationalization agreement doesn't seem beneficial on the surface, but I can see a few possible perks. Alina, how could you? I'm not saying support the plan, only that need not be a disaster for us. Any nationalization plan will still need Rizia's support to go through. That means we'll be in position to make demands. What we lose in gold, we could gain by making a good energy deal, for example. Huh. Sounds like I've got my money on the wrong resource. An energy deal would be a better long-term solution than relying on gold mining in a foreign country anyway. As long as we have energy to offer, that is. There's one other possibility, she lowered her voice. We not only buy back Rizia's share of the mitts, but pressure Lesbia's out from under them. Rusty grinned. That is a plan I can get behind. Push Lesbia out of its and increase her gold returns while we're at it. Great idea. It's just a thought, Your Majesty. That was everything I wanted to talk about. You're sure about that, Your Majesty? I'm very happy to talk about the long-term negative impact of nationalization. Lena shook her head. No, we've taken enough time here. We should reconvene with the others. All right. He locked eyes with me. You know what to do, Your Majesty. He motioned for the gods to escort him out of the reception hall. We headed back to the conference room and settled back into our seats. I'm ready to proceed with the vote. I'm happy to hear that. Sultana motioned to her security to take notes. We will use an open voting procedure. Going clockwise around the table, the Republic of Manila casts its vote in favor of nationalization. The Republic of Vagsland casts its vote for nationalization as well. The Prime Minister of Lesbia, being of sound mind, cast his votes against nationalization. It was my turn. Prime Minister Sultana leaned forward eagerly, as Alvarez eyed me warily. What do I want to do here? What do I want to do here? That is the question. As the King of Rizia, I vote in favor of nationalization. The international trade zone should be under Romellan ownership. Hegel applauded solemnly. A wise choice, Mr. Taurus. History will reward you for it. I'm surprised as I am grateful, Mr. Taurus. I look forward to collaborating with you on a fair proposal. I turned to look at Alvarez. He had an artificial smile on his face. I know when I've been defeated. You can count on my cooperation. I am absolutely brimming with suggestions. I am sure you are. Sultana rose from her seat energetically. We should inform our guests of the good news. Let's get back to the reception hall. The Rizian, Vagslandian, lesbian delegation slowly began filling out the conference room. Next to me, Alina spoke under her breath. A brave choice, Your Majesty. We'll have to drive a hard bargain with Manila or risk disrupting gold production. I know, but I truly think will be better for us in the long run. You're the king. I trust your instincts. As Alvarez and I stood up, I saw him take another sip from his flask. He noticed my gaze and nodded slightly. So you side with the commies in the end. Are you surprised? I made my intentions clear. Not surprised. Disappointed. First your naval shenanigans with Pales, now this. You're really starting to test my resolve, King Taurus. He stepped past me and out the door. Hegel was still seated. I could feel his eyes boring into me. I smiled at him. He gave me the same mysterious smile he had before. We walked back onto the stage of the reception hall and awaited Prime Minister Sultana's announcement. Alright, I feel like this could go bad, but I'm going to go for it. And I want to try to do specific things, and hopefully we can figure this out. Oh boy, I am worried about it though. Substantial rallies occurred in Salbis with protesters calling for a new decentralized constitutional agreement. The focus is on achieving self-government expressed through slogans and manners. Ignore. Alright. New report highlights poor state of Rizian transit infrastructure. Experts are warning that due to lack of investment, Rizia's railway, bus, and tram system are becoming dangerously overloaded. If substantial modernization and expansion efforts are not undertaken soon, the public transportation infrastructure risks not only frequent service disruptions, but also potential safety hazards due to aging fleet and increased commuter demand. RNC requests election campaign funds. Rizian Nationalist Coalition leader Daria Darava seeks financial backing from the Crown to secure a royalist party position against the opposition party. Our decision on funding could sway the election outcome, change the political future of our kingdom. As the House of Delegates election campaign for 1954 begins, the RNC promises to support the monarchy. The monarchy does not need an election campaign to keep the people under their control. I'm a monarchy. That is beneath me. I'm friendly with the Republic of Morella now. That's nice. I have a feeling this is going to go so badly. Monarchy stays neutral in electoral funding. In a display of fairness, the Crown has decided not to fund any party in the upcoming election. This move upholds the noble principle of political neutrality and respects the ability of Rizians to choose their leader's party without expressive royal financial influence. It's a stance that has been questioned by many royalists and could set a precedent for future electoral processes in the kingdom. Survey shows lack of stable housing affecting birth rates. Hey, I helped with housing. I did one thing that helped health housing. Come on, that should be good enough. A survey among the citizenry of major Rizian cities has shown a direct correlation between failing childbirth rates and decrease in stable living conditions, with many families forced to frequently move apartments as eviction rates rise. Several prominent nobles and nationalist campaigners have drawn attention to the issue, loudly proclaiming the future of Rizian population is at stake if no action is undertaken. Crown assures gold stores will remain stable despite its nationalization. Together with the government of Morella and Vaxlan, His Majesty King Ramis has voted for the nationalization of the FTM International Trade Zone, leaving many wondering what will happen to our gold. Not to worry, a press spokesperson from the Crown has told us our country's legendary wealth will not disappear overnight. The nationalization agreement will require intensive back and forth negotiations, and we are confident His Majesty will not give up Rizia's gold without a fight. We are at the Held are optimistic that Rizia will be able to continue as we always have in the midst, but with the added benefit of Morella's cooperation and trust. The rise of second-wave Taurus maximism in Xena. A specter of second-wave totalist maximism is sweeping across Xena continent, with his aggressive stance of moderate totalitarianism gaining substantial political ground. This resurgence reflects the original Maximist movement ideals, emphasizing extreme efficiency and stark modernism as foundational societal pillars. The burgeoning ideology poses a robust challenge to the conventional governance structures, potentially realigning Xena's internal political dynamics and its role in the global stage. As totalist maximalism entrenches itself as influence over regional alliances, international diplomacy becomes increasingly consequential. It's stirring unease among established democracies and neighboring powers. MITS to be nationalized despite Lesbian opposition. At the recent MITS board meeting, Lesbia was outvoted by Morella, Vaxlan, and Rizia, as the latter all agreed to nationalize the MITS and bring it back into Morellan hands. While Lesbian Prime Minister Alvarez criticized the move, calling it a profit-snatching attack on corporations in the region, the other countries agreed with Morella's concerns about workers' rights and environmental issues. Yeah, that's why I did it. Definitely. That's the main reason. But anyways, I think this is a good time to go ahead and end this episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, peace.